The update on Cody Rhodes is that he had successful surgery to repair his pec tear on Thursday. On SmackDown, Michael Cole said that Cody faces up to 9 months on the shelf before we see him again. Actually, I don't even think he said up to. I think the update he gave was that he's expected to be out for 9 months. That's the high end of how long he could potentially be out for. It could be 9 months. It could just as easily be 6 months. But probably no less than that. There's no way he's missing the Royal Rumble. His wife Brandy posted on Thursday the doctor just repaired Cody's pectoral tendon, which was torn completely off the bone. Successful surgery. He is on the road to recovery now. A missed opportunity there for Brandy to say that he is on the roads to recovery. What's wrong with me? Fightful reported that WWE had Cody, before he went under the knife, film interviews and other material for an eventual documentary about his injury, among other things. Yeah, I'm sure it's also about his return to the company and all that stuff. Yeah, of course they did. I mean, they would be stupid not to. Once he's ready to return, that documentary is going to hit Peacock either right before or right after he wins the Royal Rumble. But I put Cody over during my Hell in a Cell review for the guts that it took and the nuts. The guts and the nuts. That could be the title of his eventual book. To go into that Hell in a Cell match with that type of injury, even if he couldn't tear it any more than it was already torn. When you have an injury, you could overcompensate for it by putting stress on other parts of the body. Yeah, I mean, there's any number of ways that he could have hurt himself or his opponent. So, gutsy, yes. Stupid? Absolutely. But you can see why he did it. It was never a thought in his head. Unless it was some kind of a leg injury, he physically could not walk to the ring. Cody Rhodes, there wasn't a second that went by that Cody Rhodes probably thought, well, I've got to bow out of this match. Probably from the moment he tore it and got hurt, he was thinking, how can I work around this? He went in there and he had an all-timer with Seth Rollins. I saw Meltzer even gave them the 5-star treatment for those who care about that sort of thing. He also gave the Young Bucks another 5 stars for their match with the Lucha Bros on last week's Rampage. But Meltzer hasn't given a WWE main roster match 5 stars in over a decade. Not since John Cena against CM Punk at Money in the Bank. And funny enough, it was in that very same building in Chicago. So in the eyes of Uncle Dave, the Allstate Arena is to WWE what the Tokyo Dome is to New Japan. But Cody did it because it was his first singles pay-per-view main event. Everything was built around him for this show. Roman Reigns wasn't even on the poster anymore. He was replaced by Cody Rhodes. So here's this guy. He's in the feature match on the show. They're in Chicago, where he's got a history, right? With that first All-In show in AEW. It's what led to AEW. Chicago is a special place for him. I've heard wrestlers, Stone Cold Steve Austin even has said Chicago is his favorite place to work because the crowds there are always so energetic and so hot. Chicago is such a great wrestling city. It's why Tony Khan keeps going back there over and over again. They'll be back there in a couple of weeks. So it's a special place for him. And also he did it because now he's a made man. There isn't any way that Vince McMahon does not put that championship on him after he gets back. But I don't want to ever see that again. It was totally unnecessary. It was great for Cody's career, but it was completely unnecessary. But he came back out on Monday for one last promo before heading off for surgery, which, again, he had taken care of a few days later. Not before teasing that he would be possibly would be entering the Money in the Bank ladder match next month. Which, spoiler, he will not be in. I was at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in Philadelphia, the year that Cody should have won, back in 2013, and they gave it to Damian Sandow instead. That should have been Cody's year. That should have been Cody's briefcase that year. But in the promo here, he put over Seth Rollins, but he said after 3 straight wins, I'm done with him. The Rollins and Rhodes trilogy is now over. Rollins came out, he actually put Cody over. It was a side of Seth Rollins that we have not seen in a very long time. He put him over like a normal human being. There was no cackling like a hyena. He said Cody came out after WrestleMania and shook his hand, and he wanted to come out here and return the favor. And they shook hands. But you had to know that it wasn't going to end like that. And as Cody was going to the back, he had his back turned. Here comes Seth Rollins back out with a sledgehammer to put down Cody. He ripped his dress shirt off. He's stomping on the torn pec. The only thing missing here was a classic Jim Ross call. He would have given Rollins the Triple H treatment. Nobody hated Triple H more than Jim Ross. So they used this as a way to get some heat back on Seth Rollins because this guy just lost 3 straight pay-per-views, including a Hell in a Cell match to basically a one-arm man. He still couldn't beat him. So they had to do something if they weren't going to turn Rollins babyface, which I think was an option that they should have considered. Yeah, think back to the match he had with Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. The fans were ready to back Seth Rollins, even though it was a battle between 2 heels. With Cody down for however many months it's going to be, I think turning Seth Rollins would have been a viable option to build to an eventual rematch with Roman Reigns. Roman never beat Seth. He never did beat Seth Rollins in that match. But they didn't go down that road. So Cody is going to be gone for a while. Now, you look to a Rumble comeback in time for WrestleMania and hope that he's ready to go by then. He could win the Rumble. He could get his match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. If they can't bring in The Rock. If not The Rock, the obvious opponent right now at this moment for Roman Reigns is Cody Rhodes. But this is all assuming that Roman doesn't lose the championship, both belts before then. He's got Clash at the Castle coming up in September with Drew McIntyre. And could very well drop at least one, if not both of the belts there. Now, if Rock comes in, it's Rock and Reigns. Cody could challenge somebody else for the title if Roman were to lose one or both belts before then. Remember, it's the WWE title that Cody needs to win, not necessarily the Universal title, for the story to work. So, at worst, they could plug Cody back in against Seth Rollins, since Rollins attacked him on Monday. But, you know what? As great as their trilogy was, I think I still put the Edge-Rollins trilogy slightly above this one, but they were both great. As great as their trio of matches were, we don't need to go back to that again. We already got it 3 times. Cody won all 3. There's no reason to go back to it, except the fact that Rollins now is the one who took him out. What I would do is I would have the Royal Rumble match come down to Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. Rollins can play the Iron Man role. Cody can come in maybe midway through. I don't know if they would want to save him as a surprise or if they would, build it up the way they did with Triple H. Everybody knew Triple H was going to be in the Rumble. He had already come back. So maybe it's not a big surprise. Cody comes in midway through, and the final 2 in the match are Rhodes and Rollins, and Cody can get his revenge by dumping Seth to win the match. And that's the only blow-off we need between them. I don't even think we need another, pay-per-view match. But when Cody comes back, he's going to be an even bigger star than he was when he left. The story is there for them to tell. So much of how it plays out for WrestleMania depends on whether they can get The Rock for that show. So the timing of the injury, it sucks for WWE, but it doesn't have to suck for Cody. You can look at it from the perspective of, now he is spared months of random feuds to build to his eventual title match. He could go right from the performance of a lifetime right into an epic Royal Rumble return if he can make it back by then. And then parlay that into a WrestleMania main event, all without the bullshit in between. This does not have to be a negative for Cody Rhodes. By the way, speaking of Seth Rollins, this was pretty funny. I have to mention this. So WWE is coming back to Atlantic City August 14th. They're going to be back in Atlantic City for the first time in 3 years. It's one of their Sunday Stunner live events because they brand all the live events now, which is smart. They used to do that back in the day. I mean, they would come up with names for these tours. I remember back in 94 when Bret Hart was the champion, it was the Heart Attack Tour, right? Coming out of WrestleMania. So they have taken the Saturday Night's Main Event title and they are using it for some of these live events. And so some of them are also called Sunday Stunner. Anyway, they sent a draft of an early card to the people who run the website for the venue for them to post up, and they did. The top 3 matches listed were Bianca Belair against Asuka against Becky Lynch, Cody Rhodes against Seth freaking Rollins, and The New Day against the Usos. Now and forever, The New Day against the fucking Usos. The only problem is either autocorrect is a bitch or WWE is taking these name changes way too far. Because Asuka was listed as Ashule. Ashule. Which makes it sound like somebody sneezed in mid-sentence trying to type that out. So we have Ashule challenging for the Raw Women's Championship. And Seth Rollins was listed as not Seth freaking Rollins. He was listed as Seth Franklin Rollins. Maybe they tipped their hat on the next storyline for Seth, where the person he's feuding with is going to reveal that to be his actual middle name. His real middle name is Franklin. And he was bullied over it as a kid, and so he changed it to Freakin', but now he's been exposed as Franklin. Seth Franklin Rollins. These name changes are out of control. The website has since been corrected, and obviously they've removed Cody Rhodes. But he is now back to being Seth freaking Rollins. Always remember, card is subject to change.